DTM3 is working on her Advanced Communicator Silver ACS in order to complete this level. She must complete 10 advanced speeches and 2 presentations from either the Better Speaker Series or the Successful Club Series. These are prepared modules from Toastmasters International that were prepared as a means of training clubs with various TM Toastmaster skills. Today, Mary Ann will be speaking from the Successful Club Series. The topic she will be presenting is Evaluate to Motivate. Time is a 10 to 12 minute speech. Again, evaluate to motivate. Mary Ann Burrows.
Evaluate to motivate. Fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests. In Toastmasters, there's 2 ways that we evaluate. One is the general evaluator who evaluates the whole meeting, which we'll see later. And the other is to evaluate a speech. Before I go into the talk, I want to talk about the word evaluate. How many of you feel real comfortable if someone says, I'm going to evaluate you? Kind of cringe. And if someone said to Kelly, Kelly's boss said, Kelly, I want to see you on Monday morning at 9 o'clock because I'm going to give you an evaluation. My guess is she'd have a pretty rough weekend, wondering, did he like me? Did he not like me? Did he do something wrong? Am I going to get fired or am I going to get a raise? Yeah. And I think we also, as human beings, probably because we don't feel that good about ourselves internally, don't really like the idea of evaluating somebody else. We don't want to make them feel bad. We want them to like us. So it's a tricky scenario. So today we're going to talk about ways and skills of becoming a good, motivative evaluator so that the speaker or someone else will feel good about what your input is. And there is a flyer on your seat there that you can look at. One of the benefits of being an evaluator is that you have immediate feedback. We know you give a speech, 20 minutes later, someone is evaluating. And if you've ever lost your evaluation form and then asked somebody to evaluate it later, it's much more challenging for the evaluator to remember all the details to give a good, thorough evaluation. So that feedback is very helpful. Another thing you want to do is to tell them how they might improve on that skill. An example, my very first speech, my evaluator said, Mary Ann, you looked at the floor a lot. My first response was, I did not, until I looked at the video. She was right on. I looked at the floor a lot. But she didn't just stop there. She gave a suggestion. She said, I'm guessing you're probably not real comfortable with eye contact at this point, as most of us as beginner speakers are not. So she said, find a point on the wall just above the head of the audience and look at that. That way the audience thinks you have eye contact even if you don't have a specific eye contact, which was a great idea because it certainly helped me from looking at the ground, which disengages from your audience. Okay, the next point is to build self-esteem. You want that individual, in Toastmasters especially, to come back and try again later. And if you tell them all negative things, there's a real good chance they'll go out that door and they will not come back. And think about this. If that person that you're evaluating gave the worst speech you ever saw in your whole life, that individual still spent a lot of time preparing for that speech, practicing that speech, and then took the courage to stand up in front of a group of people who, as most of you know, is considered the #1 most feared thing in the whole world, and presented that speech. So they need to be encouraged to continue to move forward. All right, with evaluations, it's a tell and show experience. It's not a dialogue between the speaker and the evaluator. And unless the evaluator has a specific question they might want to ask the evaluator asks a specific question of the speaker. For the most part, the evaluator is just sharing their opinions. And I think it's really important to know they're sharing their opinion and their opinion only. In fact, some people, when they evaluate, specifically state it that way. And that's one of the reasons why it's so helpful to fill out the forms of evaluation, because that way you get feedback from a variety of people. And I personally have had a speech where one person said they like something, another person said they don't like the very same thing. And I think it's really important as the speaker to take in that information, maybe view your video like I did and find out maybe they were right, but then take that information and really feel out, is that right for me? I've had people say, well, you know, if I gave that speech, I wouldn't say this or I wouldn't do that. And then I viewed that, I thought, no, you know what? That feels like something I would want in that speech. So you're the one that gets to choose that at the last minute. All right, so remember, you listen, they talk. Very, very important that you show you're interested. To me, I always think of the speaker of the day as the king or the queen of the meeting. They're the focal point. All the other roles are very valuable and important, but the speaker, they're highlighted. So when you're going to be evaluating someone's speech, either call them ahead of time, send them an email, or before the meeting, spend some time, go over what the objectives and the purpose of that particular speech is, so that you as the evaluator already know exactly what you're looking for as you're filling out the information on the evaluation sheet. Very important that you have the criteria of that speech. It's not just about giving a wonderful speech, it's about fulfilling those obligations that you're looking for. Look over the manual, make sure you have the form, whether it's in the manual or the evaluation sheet, so that you can check off the information as you're listening to the speech. Ask the individual if they have any concerns. An example, my first 10 years in Toastmasters, almost every evaluation I ever had was, we can't hear you. I might have my evaluators sit in the back of the room and ask them to check and see how I am projecting my voice, so I can get feedback and understand how I'm doing in regard to that. Personalize it. Again, they're the king or the queen that day. Really make them feel special. They worked hard to present and prepare for that speech, and then again to actually share it. Make sure you evaluate the speech, not the person. Very important. Not only that, but you're really evaluating how they spoke, not necessarily even the content, except for in the experience of making sure that they did fulfill the requirements or purpose of the speech. An example, a couple of weeks ago I gave a speech. It was a humor speech that began with a story and ended with a story, and the content had to support the stories. Now, say someone gave an excellent speech, but it wasn't funny, didn't have a talk or a story at the beginning or end, they didn't fulfill the criteria of that speech. And you might recommend that they actually repeat that speech to fulfill the requirements of that particular speech. So that's very important. And then aid or add self-esteem. Again, you want to encourage people to continue and to step up again. I often suggest people give a speech at least once a month or once every other month, because you want to get back on that horse as quickly as possible, or you're going to start from scratch again. So it's important to keep that encouragement going. There you go. All right, and then how to observe and listen. Ralph Smedley, who was the man who began Toastmasters International over 80 years ago, wanted to make sure that young men knew how to speak, how to be leaders in the community, and to be good listeners. Being a speech evaluator is an excellent opportunity for you to develop listening skills, because you have to really listen to what that person's saying, and you have to listen through the lens of what needs to be accomplished by that particular speech. You want to make sure that you get the manual or the evaluation form and make sure that's filled out. And then, of course, return to the individual that day so they have it for their records. Very important. Timing for an evaluation is 2 to 3 minutes. The light comes on, the green light comes on at 2, the orange or amber at 2.5, and then the green at 3, and you have 30 seconds to complete it or finish it up. Now, in a club meeting, we like to have you gear it towards that, but if you're in a speech contest and you go over or below that, you would be disqualified. So it's very important to really hone into your timing. Then, when you're doing your evaluation, you want to have about 3 comments that are very positive, 1 or 2 on things to improve, perhaps 3 if it's a very advanced individual, and then 1 or 2 comments in regard to a positive closing. Now, there's a couple ways of doing evaluations. One is to fill out the criteria on the manual or the evaluation form, and then follow through with that. Another one is what they call the sandwich approach, which is actually what I use. And a sandwich approach is simply get a piece of paper, plus, 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 minus, minus, plus, plus. Then fill out all the lines, and you've got your evaluation form ready to go as you present it to your audience. Very simple. And you want to always remember, again, to suggest different forms of improvement when you can. And it is literally your job as an evaluator to not only share things that you really felt were good about the speech, but to give at least 1 or 2 suggestions of improvement. If you were in an evaluation contest and you did not do the second part where you had suggestions, you probably would not win that contest. In fact, somebody from this particular club who's really, really good at giving evaluations totally blacked out and forgot that, and she did not win that contest. So very important that you follow through with that. And very important, you want to make sure that you motivate and encourage the individual so that they want to get back up here and try again. And one last thought, remember, in order to have an evaluator, you have to have a speaker. So start signing up for roles as a speaker so that you can give somebody the opportunity to be a motivational evaluator.